Smooth 98.1 Lagos, Nigeria world. It is gone past 6:34. Hump of the week, Wednesdays. This is a Business Express, and we have got some talking to do about those inflation figures that we saw yesterday. Now, joining me for this very interesting conversation, which I'm going to ask him questions about the last time we talked about inflation, I've got Kelvin Emmanuel, who's the CEO of Dairy Hills Limited. Good morning, Kelvin. How are you?
Good morning, Sophia. I'm fine, thank you. How are you today?
Wonderful, bright and chirpy, especially because I have got Onome Ohwovoriole, who's an investment analyst with Money Africa, and is here with us for this conversation. Hi, Onome.
Hi, Sope. Good morning, Lagos.
All right. So, Lagos, well, actually, you know what? Wherever you are in the world, I've got you too. So join this conversation. We're already streaming live up on YouTube and you are watching already. So for those who want to go over to YouTube, the site is youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You can join the conversation up on the live chat. Get your messages in early so I can see them on time. You can also send WhatsApp messages in to 0809 444 981. And you can take things over to Twitter using the hashtag Business Express 981. All right, so we've got our inflation rising to 21.09% in October as we look at those figures for last month. So, gentlemen, I'm going to start with Kelvin, and then I'm going to get over to you, Onome. Kelvin, I had you on a couple of days ago, right? And we talked about the inflation figures that you were expecting to come out yesterday. You made some predictions. Tell me your thoughts. What did you say and what did you see?
To be honest with you, I know this is on record, this is live. I will say categorically that I don't believe these numbers. And the reason is because inflation is calculated based on food and energy index. And when you look at the fact that over the last 8 weeks, especially for parts of the Niger Delta, you had like several states that couldn't get PMS and AGO. In Abuja, there was fuel scarcity. In fact, in the states like Bayelsa, the price of a liter of PMS was going for around 600 naira per liter. And these food and energy index are weighted averages, okay? Rice prices has gone up, which is the most consumed food in Nigeria as a staple. It's gone up by at least 27 to 30% over this 8 weeks period because of the flooding. It's kind of surprising to believe that the core inflation moved from 20.77 to 21.09%. Those numbers are managed. I don't believe them. I'm currently trying to use a multilinear regression model to look at the data and see what the accurate yield is. But I don't believe those numbers at all.
All right, now, Onome, please, I'd love to get your weigh in on this, right? Because we've had the inflation rate rising for the 9th straight month to 21.09%. Kelvin has already talked about core inflation. What would you say about these rates and about what Kelvin has just...
Hi, can you hear me, Shepard?
Yes, I can. And what would you say about what Kelvin has just put forth? Onome, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I think it's fading in and out. Maybe it's a network thing. So if you look at the numbers on a month-on-month basis, the inflation actually, the rate of inflation slowed down. So, and that's because we're in harvesting season. But my worry is we may start to see inflation pick up as the elections approach. And I don't think that the effects of the flooding are yet to see them filter through yet. So I'm actually expecting inflation numbers to rise higher than that. When you look at the country like Ghana that is pushing what, 30-40%, I think that maybe we might hit the 23%, 25% before things start to taper down.
Oh, wow. Onome, your voice is slightly low, so we're going to need some more punch so that we can get you loud and clear. Now, I am, a Nigerian, and I'm feeling the effects of, just for the average Nigerian, we might not be looking at numbers, we're just looking at how slim and how anorexic our wallets are looking lately. So I want to talk about the impact of because even though we're seeing numbers, and Kelvin, you've already talked about how you believe that, okay, it's actually the numbers are higher, but either way, what's the impact on the average Nigerian?
So the impact is this, the more the numbers keep going up, there is what they call the inflation to interest yield curve. I think I was mentioning this a couple of days ago. So if you look at the rule of 72 and rule of 69, which basically measures the ratio between how fast an economy loses 100% of its purchasing power because of the rise in inflation, and the rule of 69, which measures how far an investment doubles in an economy because of the level of inflation, and then the MPR that is raised. So what central banks popularly call the inflation to interest yield curve. So the more the inflation goes up, the more they raise the monetary policy rate, the MPR, to align that and prevent a negative return on yield for investors. You'll see that capital becomes more expensive. Capital becomes more expensive, and it's more difficult for financial institutions to lend to the real sector. And when you consider the fact that the problems we have with the Nigerian economy is both monetary and fiscal. Monetary because excessive printing of money from ways and means lending, which is a violation of Section 38 of the CBN Act, has led to an overflooding of cash supply in the economy, and it's heated the system. And fiscal because it's also a demand pull issue. Nigeria is not producing enough to meet up with the demand. For example, 30% of the rice paddy that is processed into rice in Nigeria currently is smuggled in through Niger and Cameroon, around KB, northwestern Nigeria, and Mubi in Adamawa in northeastern Nigeria, smuggled. So Nigeria is not producing enough of the food it consumes, which is affecting the prices of food in the market, and is causing an increase in food inflation. Nigeria is also not refining. Nigeria only does about 100,000 liters of AGO, automated gasoline oil, that popularly called diesel. Nigeria doesn't produce its own PMS. The four government refineries are moribund. They are not producing anything, even if they are consuming about 100 billion in overhead every year, according to audited NMPC data. So you realize that the weaker the Naira gets as a currency, the more expensive it is to import energy, and the higher inflation goes, because energy exchange rate is actually 70% determinant and input to the inflation figures that are calculated in Nigeria, which is the reason why I said earlier that these numbers are managed.
Right. And Onome, so we heard from the IMF at the Nigerian Economic Summit yesterday, in which they talked about this very same thing of the CBN's funding of the government's deficits not having any good impact on inflation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Hello?
Onome, can you hear me?
Yeah, I heard the first half of the question about the CBN funding of the deficit. I didn't get.
Yes, the IMF speaking at the summit, saying that they are not, that the CBN's funding of the government's deficit through ways and means is would not have a great impact on inflation. Can you speak to that?
So I agree, but here's the thing, and here's why it happened. The government is broke. Crude oil revenue is down. The CBN had to step in, maybe a bit too much. But ultimately, when you pump in that kind of amount of money into an economy, you're going to see higher inflation. And so, yes, you might argue that that's probably one reason why you have higher inflation in the country. Coupled with the different intervention programs that the CBN has done. But when you look at things minutely, the biggest headache with inflation in Nigeria is that we have a lot of bottlenecks in terms of production. So the bad roads, the insecurity, the multiple agencies regulate business, all these costs tend to make business more expensive. And having operational costs more expensive filters into, inflation. So I think for the ways and means, the way I see things, luckily is the CBN appears to be keen on winding it down or going back, dialing down drastically the amount they've lent to the government. And hopefully we will see that taper down. But we do need more fiscal discipline from the government. I think that's very, very key.
Okay, now
so what can I respond to that?
Very quickly, Kelvin.
I
We've
don't.
got only a couple of minutes.
I don't agree with that position, and the reason is very simple. Currently, as we speak, Ways and Means is up to 22.8 trillion naira, which is equivalent to about $49.2 billion. That window, there are laws and precedents, and the law in Section 38 of the CBN Act says that the CBN, as a lender of last resort, not first resort, is not obligated to give the Nigerian government more than 5% of real revenues for the previous accounting year. 5% of real revenues in Nigeria is $450 million, because government's real revenues last year was about $9 billion. Now, you've exceeded that more than 100 times, not 100%. And that has led to too much supply of cash in the system, basically for what they call quantitative easing, money you just injected in the economy without any production. You printed because CBN can do that, So you have an issue with excess cash supply in the economy. And they're not dialing down, because in September of this year, 2 months ago, the CBN still advanced the federal government 749 billion naira. So how are they dialing down?
All right, real quick, let's talk about the impact of these figures. Are we going to see, what are we going to see, or what do you predict the impact will be on the Monetary Policy Committee meeting next week?
Considering that the numbers are managed and the numbers came out at less than 0.5%, and the difference between the MPR and the inflation, core inflation, is somewhere around maybe 5.5%. They might consider maybe raising 0.25 or 0.5, or consider staying. The forward guidance for next year will depend on how real the numbers as released by the MBS is going forward. But I don't expect that even if they decide to hike, they will hike more than 0.25 to 0.5%.
Onome, do you agree? All right.
I think yes, I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe 0.5%.
All right. Let me read this message from EA very quickly, who says, EIA rather, very quickly, says, Kelvin, I understand your perspective, but the numbers might not actually be managed. It could be the data that has been used. Is there any motivation to manage the numbers? I doubt that. But you know what? The truth will be out sooner or later, is what EIA says. And to a gang up on YouTube, I got you. Some of us are not in Lagos, so this is Business Express for everybody, because we got YouTube and we've got WhatsApp as well. And Twitter, of course. All of them are without borders. So very quickly, the last thing I want to, do we even have time? We don't have time. I'm just going to say thank you very much, gentlemen. And where can we find you up on social media so that we can continue the conversation there?
My Twitter handle is at realkelvin07. And Sope, thank you so much for having me this morning.
It's been a blast. Thank you so much, Kelvin. Onome, what about you? Social media handles?
Quantimodo, QUANSIMODO on Twitter.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much, Onome. Thank you, Kelvin, for joining me for today's Business Express. That's all we've got time for, folks. But don't you worry. Tomorrow is another day. 6:30 in the morning. We'll be here once more. 15 minutes of Business Express. Till then.